Today in the show, I'm chatting with Mike Van Eaton of Van Eaton Galleries. Van Eaton Galleries is a shop and auction house in Southern California, specializing in animation and the entertainment industry, and often focusing on Disney memorabilia. At a Van Eaton auction, you can often find the smallest Disney item, like a park ticket, all the way up to something as large as a ride vehicle or giant piece of park signage. One of the many cool things about Van Eaton Galleries is that these items are put on display for the public to see for free before they're sold or auctioned off. Listen as Mike and I discuss some of the wild items that have come through his doors, the mindset of a collector, how people get their hands on some of these remarkable items in the first place, and so much more.
It's time to dive into today's Disney dialogue.
Hello, Mike, and welcome to Disney Coast to Coast. How you doing today?
Good, man. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you about your business, Van Eaton Galleries, because I don't know how long ago it came on my radar, but for Disney fans, it is this beautiful little crowning jewel in Southern California if you're a fan of memorabilia and collectibles.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that. And actually, this year's our 30th anniversary.
That's right. You opened in 1994. And I kind of just want to start at the beginning. How did Van Eaton Galleries begin, and why did you even venture into this sort of business?
That's a weird story. I'm not sure why. I'll try to make it really quick. It's really easy. I was a musician. I came out here to do some work. I was walking down the street. I found a guy's wallet, believe it or not. And in the wallet was a little card that said, I sell animation art. This was in the 1980s. And I knew what animation art was. I watched cartoons all my life. I was really into it. For my high school's halftime show, I wrote a halftime show with music from cartoons. But anyway, so I thought that was really cool. So when I returned the wallet to the guy, he gave me some cells, some animation cells as a thank you. And that was like the first cells I ever owned. I was so excited, and I was doing some gigs. I had some money, so I said, "Wow, let me buy some more." I think he really just set the hook, is what he did by giving me that. So I started buying everything he had, just everything. I just couldn't get enough of it. And people back east would call him. Cell collecting was sort of getting big, and there were a lot of galleries that were buying cells, and he was a big source. And they'd call him and say, "Hey, do you have a Donald Duck cell?" And he says, "I had 10 of them, but one guy bought them. Why don't you call him?" And so all of a sudden, I was getting calls from people wanting cells, and I figured it was a great way to improve my collection. I could buy them from this guy, sell them for a little more money, then go buy more. And so that's what I did. And I just started collecting these cells just randomly. And there was a frame shop I would get them framed at, and I put some up on the wall there, and people started coming and buying them. And then the framer said, "I got an extra room if you just want to make a gallery." So I made a gallery, and that was the beginning of it. So.
That's hilarious. So that original guy whose wallet you returned
Yes.
basically sounds like a drug dealer. He gave you a little taste.
Absolutely. I don't know what you collect, but collecting is sort of like that. Yeah, you just want more, especially when it comes to animation, which I was a big fan of. Or for me, toys also, things like that. Yeah, I want to see everything. I want to build this just collection of stuff that means something to me. Which is what collecting is. So.
So you started by kind of just selling things individually, and then you really started doing auctions. How long ago did the auctions begin?
Well, so we opened the gallery in '94, and I actually had worked. I did consulting for an auction house out here in Southern California, who would do some animation art auctions, and they would occasionally have some Disneyland stuff in them. And it gave me an idea of how the auction business worked, because it's got a lot of moving parts to it. And it was neat, but I had never thought about doing it. And then in 2015, a gentleman brought me a Disneyland collection, and he just wanted me to sell it for him. He just said, "Just sell it." And I said, this, if we sell it, you're going to leave money on the table. Why don't we auction it? So I was real honest. I've never done an auction, but I know how they work, and I know what I don't like about them and what I do like about them. So maybe we can just build this auction. So at that time, we were in our old gallery on Ventura Boulevard in Sherman Oaks. And his collection was so big that we actually couldn't house it in the gallery. So we took our parking lot and we put up a tent. and we held the auction in a tent outside, and it was really successful. So that was 2015, and we've been doing them ever since.
Wow, so the auctions are actually considerably newer than I realized. I thought that they went back a lot further.
Absolutely no. So they've only been doing them what 10, 15 years. Yeah.
Wow, so do you have what was the name of that first auction that you had?
It was called The Story of Disneyland.
Yeah, you've had a lot of Disney auctions through the years, and I do notice like they always have a unique name to them. I'm always like, oh, they got to be running out of names.
Oh, I do that all the time. I go, what am I going to do now? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we'll try everything, and we about 2 or 3 years ago, because again, animation, especially Disney animation, Disneyland, it all sort of ties together. It's a lot of the stuff. Honestly, everything that we auction off is pretty much stuff I collect because that's all I really like and that's all I know about. So, but we're branching a little bit into more pop culture because, as I mentioned, I do like toys. So we're getting into toys a bit and movies and props and things like that, which I have an outlying interest in. So, but I think Disney and Disneyland memorabilia is always going to be the whole, the real wheelhouse. So.
And is that primarily because that's what you're a fan of, or how did you fall? Okay, so you're a
That
big
it
Disney
really is.
fan.
It's just what I grew up with, what I'm a fan of, and sort of what I'm familiar with. I don't want to auction off wine because I really don't. I'm not familiar with it, right? So, I get that I could and that there's money there, but it wouldn't be as fun as doing these auctions and getting to see all this cool stuff that I like. So.
Very cool. Now, one of the things I love about your auctions are the memorabilia you have is often from the smallest little thing, like an e-ticket book, to giant items like ride vehicles, even, and everything in between there. But I'm curious, what are some of the favorite Disney pieces that have come through your doors that have been auctioned off, and you're just like, oh, wow.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, if it's my favorite piece, I hope it didn't make it to auction. I hope I have it in my collection. But I've always liked attraction posters, so I'm always a fan of those. I'm always looking out for the couple that are really hard to find and really rare. The ride vehicles are a little bit too big for me. I love the stretch paintings from the Haunted Mansion. In fact, I had one that we sold years ago when we were just getting our business going, and I always regret. That's a big thing about collecting. You regret what you sell more than anything. But I do like the Haunted Mansion paintings and some signage. I think is really cool. For me, it's just what triggers something, a memory at the park. If it's from a ride like Pirates was my favorite ride when I was a kid. So if it's something that's key to a scene that I remember as a kid, I want it. That's the trick. So it could be something small. It could be just a button, but at the same time, it could be an animatronic figure. I'd be really happy with. So.
That's very cool. Now, you said there are a couple attraction posters that are rare that you're hoping to come by. Which attraction posters are those?
Well, I just got Casa de Fritos about a year ago, which is a very rare one and a very odd one. I just like it. But we had in the Joel McGee auction, we had the Art Corner attraction poster, which I think is quite rare and I really liked. But it was out of my budget, so I didn't get that. And and there's a Stouffer's Tiki Room one also that he had that's really cool. I really like. I just like the graphics on them, the colors, things like that.
I'll tell you, that's where I'm not much of a collector, to be honest. Like, I don't know, stuff is just kind of gets in the way for me, but I am a Prince person. I mean, you can see behind me, I have Prince and stuff up on the wall. I love Prince. So and luckily for me, like, they can not take up too much space. There's a lot under my bed and like rolled up and stuff. But when it comes to like, I don't know, like popcorn buckets are so huge at the parks now and everybody collects popcorn buckets. I don't really want them, to be completely honest. It would have to be something super niche that I love. Like if a Honey, I Shrunk the Kids popcorn bucket ever came out, then I'd be there. But otherwise, I don't know. It's too much stuff.
It's different for everybody, and that's the beauty of collecting, right? You collect what you're attracted to, what you like, and also what fits in your house. I may be part hoarder. That's the problem, because it's in my closets, it's everywhere in my house. Not I don't get to display it all. In fact, this is we just moved into this new facility, and I have a bigger office. I haven't hung it on the wall, and I'm excited because I can actually display more of my collection than just have it sitting in closets everywhere. So
And you were very smart. You made it into a business, so you have an excuse to have all of this stuff, right?
That's exactly why are you buying it. Say, oh, it's all business. It's all business. But
It's all for
yeah,
work. That's right.
all for work. Exactly.
When it comes to certain items or especially autographs or something like that, how do you go about authenticating, artwork and autographs?
Well, I've been doing it long enough. I'm really fortunate. We have a really good network of people. I always tell people I can't be an expert on everything, nor do I want to be an expert on everything. So for autographs, I have people that I will go to. Usually, I'll go to two or three people just to get a consensus of what it is. For animation, I'll go to animators. For Disneyland stuff, I'll go to Imagineers that we know and say, "Hey, does this make sense? Could this really be in the park?" And we're able to spot things pretty easily, especially when it comes to autographs, especially Walt Disney autographs. We've seen enough of them where we can see the bad ones and the good ones. In fact, I just got in a load of bad ones. I mean, literally, like 10 bad Walt Disney signatures, which was, and even then, I can think they're bad, but let me not use the word bad. There were other people signing for Walt Disney besides Walt. So I can look at them and say, I don't think this is right, but I'll still go to somebody else and get another opinion because I don't ever want to say yes or no without having, a consensus. So.
Interesting. So when you say there were other people signing for Walt Disney, you mean like people who he, worked for him and he gave permission to do that, or like counterfeiters out there?
Animation art. No, 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 not counterfeiters. He had two guys in the studio, Tom Wood and Bob Moore, who could sign his autograph for him. And their signatures are more like the logo than Walt Disney's real signature. But he would sign, say they needed gifts for people and things like that, and he really couldn't get to it. And maybe he was traveling, who knows. He would have those guys sign for him, and they would sign and send out the gift. And it looks just like his handwriting, it'll say "Best wishes, Walt Disney." But we know it's usually Bob Moore who signed it. So.
That's so funny. I know a celebrity who's still alive, so I won't say the name, but similar situation, a very, very, very big film director who just, couldn't get to signing everything, and assistants of this person signed for them. And I remember I requested an autograph once. I said, here's the deal. Get me the real one or don't give me one. Like, I don't want it's fine if you can't get it, just get me the. So that's really, I didn't know that Walt had people. I mean, it shouldn't surprise me, but that's interesting.
Yeah, I can imagine the requests he probably got, I would think, for signatures all across the board. So yeah, he definitely, and I'm sure he had to travel and he had to do work, so he had other people signing for him for sure.
Very cool. Now, is there an item that you've auctioned off that obviously there is, the one that sold for the most, and did it surprise you that it sold for so much?
Actually, there was one item we had a few years back. I met a gentleman in Salt Lake City, Utah, who was the assistant to the art director for Tomorrowland when they were building Disneyland. His name was Grenade, and he was in on all the meetings, and he has pictures of himself with Walt and all these guys. It was great. And he had, are you familiar with Herb Ryman's map of Disneyland, that first map of Disneyland?
Yes,
So that
indeed.
map, it's in the archive, right? There's an original map that's on vellum. It's on tracing paper, right? Because he had to take different elements as they designed them. They did this map over one weekend because Walt was getting ready to go pitch the idea of Disneyland to investors in New York. So he got Herb Ryman. They sat down over a weekend. They took all these elements and he would trace this could be, Tomorrowland, this could be Adventureland or whatever. They didn't call them necessarily by those names at the time. And he made this map on vellum, on this opaque paper. And then they took that vellum and they have a machine that makes a blueprint from it, what they called a brown line at that time because the lines were brown. So they made a brown line from it, and then Herb Ryman went in on this thing, and this was like 3 feet by maybe even 4 feet by 3 feet. It was very large. And they went in and he hand colored the entire piece, inked it, put in the names, everything was absolutely beautiful. And then they cut it into three pieces and put it on a presentation board, like a trifold, so that it could be taken to New York and then opened up and shown as this map of Disneyland. And we went in the archive. We were able to find the records of them actually shipping it to New York, this display piece and things like that. And then it came back from New York with Roy after everybody in New York said, no, we don't want to do it. They brought it back and it was sitting in Walt's office. And Walt gave it to this guy, Grenade. And we have pictures of Walt. We had pictures of Walt with it. It was just an incredible piece. And this was many years ago. I think Disneyland Park stuff really, when we did that auction in 2015, that was about the first Disneyland auction that had really, caught the public's attention. And I thought it would sell for a lot of money, 700, 800, even $1 million. I really think that's what it was worth. And it only sold for $650,000 in that auction. So that surprised me. Not only was it one of the most expensive pieces we ever sold, but it was a piece that I thought would actually go for more. It was an incredible piece. And in fact, about 2 years later, I got a call from someone who offered $2 million to the buyer for it, which makes more sense to me. And the buyer didn't sell, but that would made more sense to me. The piece, is that historically important and valuable. That's one of my favorite pieces we've had.
So that $650,000 was a deal.
It was a deal, believe it or not. And that's 650 plus. We charge a premium for our property, so that's 650 plus. At that time, 15%. So it was even, way up there, almost 700,000. So
Wow. So let's talk about collectors for a minute. I mean, you've obviously dealt with a lot of collectors in your business and a lot of different areas, mostly Disney, but also other animation and entertainment stuff. I'm curious, do you think Disney collectors are like of a different breed than the rest?
well, I think collectors of one genre all have something, a commonality. They have something that they can talk about and that they can enjoy together. But I do notice, and I used to go to coin shows and comic book shows and Comic Con and things like that. But I do notice that Disney collectors seem to be very happy, and I think that's just the nature of the parks too, and just very easygoing and very enthusiastic, really, really enthusiastic, and a joy to deal with all the time. Never had anybody that I could say wasn't just great to deal with. I think if you're a Disneyland fan or a Disney fan, you're a fanatic because there's just so much stuff out there that you can't help but want a little bit of everything.
So one of the things I've always been kind of surprised by or just questioning every time I go to one of your auction displays is how do these collectors originally get this stuff? Like, obviously e-tickets people bought and just held on to. But when you see a ride vehicle or an animatronic figure or something that should just be at Walt Disney Imagineering or at the Walt Disney Archives, how are these first people getting their hands on them?
Just like with anything, of course, they were never made to be collectibles, right? And I think if you worked at the park or say you were in the archive at the park, you can only collect so much stuff. You can only put so much in your archive. And in the early days of this park, especially, even I would say through the 70s, this stuff didn't mean a lot to the people at the park. Most of the people that got the stuff, I know we had a logbook from the Mark Twain, where they used to have people sign in when they got on the Mark Twain that was actually thrown in the trash and the guy just pulled it out of the trash can. Most of the stuff is given away, it's thrown away, and it's the employees that say, oh, I want that. Oh, I think I'll keep that, especially with signage because it wears out. They have to replace it, and it just goes into the trash or it goes for scrap. The Disneyland benches, they took all the benches off of Main Street and pretty much sold them for scrap, but they offered them to employees. Many employees bought these Main Street benches and put them in their backyards. And that's where we find them, or Fantasyland benches or things like that. They have a store, of course, the Company D store, where they still sell signage and leftover things after events to the employees, furniture from the hotels. They just sell it to the employees, and that's how it gets out. Disney also I'll guess it's the 90s, when eBay was first getting going, sold ride vehicles on eBay as an experiment. At the time, they sold a Dumbo. I wanted it for $5,000, and I wanted it so bad. And shipping on it from Anaheim to Sherman Oaks was $1,000, and I couldn't afford to buy the Dumbo for $5,000 and the shipping, and they wouldn't let me pick it up, so I couldn't buy it. And so somebody else bought it, put it in one of our auctions, and it sold for $400,000 a few years ago. Go figure. So but they sold a couple Dumbos. They've sold some Autopia cars, the shells. And also, if you ever went to the Disneyana conventions, they would always have these special auctions where they would sell like a Space Mountain vehicle or a window display or things like that. And those pieces, that's how a lot of them got out. And they'd also have garage sales at those Disneyana conventions where you could pick up signage and just stuff they were going to throw out anyway. So they were going to make a buck on it, and they were happy to do so. And that's where most of it comes from, employees and from past sales and auctions.
I did not realize that the Walt Disney Company sold stuff on eBay in the past.
Yeah, it was very short lived. They came back to it later. They did what's called Disney auctions, which was also on eBay. But in the beginning, they were doing ride vehicles, original concept art from the park, things like that. And also, one year, I think the opening year the Disneyland Gallery opened at Disneyland, they did a huge exhibition, The Art of Disney, and it was nothing but concept art pulled from the archives, and they put it up for sale. Unheard of, Herb Ryman, Mary Blair, Mark Davis, all these original concepts by all these guys. And it happened that two Disney fanatics were in the park when it came to that opening and pretty much bought everything to the point that the archive said, stop, we're not going to sell anymore. And so these guys are sitting on, or were sitting on, 50, 60, 100 pieces of concept art from the park. And that eventually has dispersed itself out, and become part of the inventory that we pull from all these people and these collectors. It's pretty amazing to see what happens.
That is wild. I will say several years ago, I actually sold a piece through you through your company from something I got at Company D. I got one of those Disneyland Hotel bedspreads. And I
Sure.
think I paid $7 or $8 for it, and it auctioned off for like 850. So
Crazy, huh?
it's a
Yeah.
pretty good investment.
That's the Disney, the Company D store, especially for that furniture. Like you can get bed frames from the hotels for $20 and things like that. That's sort of Disney saying to their employees, hey, furnish your house, do what you want with these, sell them if you want to, it's just a little extra. And that's exactly what people do with it. So it's pretty incredible.
So if somebody does have a piece of their collection that they're looking to sell off, what is the best way for them to start that process with Van Eaton Galleries?
Hey, just email me, or go to Van Eaton Galleries and there's a link to email and just say, hey, here's what I have. And always send a picture. It'll save one email, when you just call, say, hey, I've got this piece I'm interested in. I'll write you back and say, send me a picture. So just go ahead and send the picture and I'll look at it and I'll tell you if we can use it or not. The trick has always been, especially now because more people know us, is that we get a lot of the same things. I'm going to say souvenir maps, for instance, right? So I may have 20 maps in line and I can't put them all in the same auction. So they sort of have to be spaced out. So depending on what you have, I can say, I can't use it right now, maybe a little bit later, or I'll say, yeah, I can put it, we try to get stuff into auction quickly. So that's the trick.
And about how many auctions are you doing a year?
We are doing, we're about to have that'll be our second auction of the year. We're going to do 5 this year. They're
Okay.
not all Disney, but they all have Disney components in them. So, and park components in them. But this one coming up is all park stuff and a little bit of Disney history, I think, toys and things like that.
At this point, you've obviously had a lot of experience when it comes to pricing these items that are going up for auction. But like in the early days, how did you decide what the starting bid was going to be?
I just guessed. I just guessed. I said, here's what I would pay for it. And I also, we look, I depended heavily on my consigners, say, hey, what did you pay for this? Or what are you hoping this to go for? We would figure something out from there. So it was pretty much a guess. And the funny thing about auctions is you never know. Just like your bedspread, you brought in the bedspread. We probably started that at $100, right?
I think it
Because
was 250. Yeah.
there you go. Because I probably had some before then. But I'm sure the first one I said, well, let's try it at 100 and see what happens. And it went for 900, right? So or 800. So I mean, that's fantastic. And then we know. And I also don't like to scare people away. I don't want to start the next bedspread at $800 because I feel like you won't get anybody bidding on it. It has to feel like you have a chance to get it, and hopefully you do. Again, you never know an auction. The next one may go for $20. We don't know. That's the fun of the whole auction. So, and that's the excitement of it for me. What is this really going to end up going for, or is it going to sell at all?
Do you find that most people are selling just because they need money, or like what are the reasons that people sell? Because you have people that come in with massive collections, and we'll get into those exhibitions in a minute, but I mean massive collections, and one day they're like, I'm getting rid of all of it. It's not like they inherited it. It's theirs. What do you think sparks that?
Well, I think it's sparked by a couple things. There's always a time when you want to get rid of your collection. I think you get to a certain age where you just can't keep the stuff around anymore. A lot of the stuff we get are from retired employees, Imagineers, things like that, who just it's their time. I've had this for 50 years. I need to get rid of it. Just no more. I don't have room for it. I'm downsizing. That's always a big deal if you're downsizing. And I think there are some people who look at the market and say, this is just like a stock, right? This is the time I should sell my collection because it's not going to get any better than it is right now. Yeah. But so there's a lot of decisions making, money being one of it. But most of the time, what I hear is, I just don't have space for this anymore. I'm retiring. I'm going to move into a smaller area. I want to share. There's always this too. I want to share this with other people. I've had it long enough. We get all those kind of things like that. So a lot of times money's just the bonus. That's just the extra. A lot of people just like to see their stuff in a catalog being sold, something they collected being sold to other collectors, not being forgotten. A lot of people say, my kids don't care about this stuff like I do. I'd like to see it go to someone who cares about it. And that's what we do.
That's very cool. I don't think you've been around long enough for this to have happened, but have you ever seen a situation where somebody has bought something at an auction from your business and then resold it through your business?
Absolutely. Yes, it happens. No, yeah,
Really?
and that usually is a money thing. Usually, I bought this, 10 years ago and I need to sell it now. That's fine. But it just depends on how long you hold on to your collection and how old you are more than anything else. So,
All right. So this is, you have a brick and mortar business. You're in Studio City, California now, right?
yes,
Folks listening, that is not far from Walt Disney Studios. It's not terribly far from Disneyland. So if you're interested on a SoCal visit, definitely worth checking out because you have like a storefront that people can come and visit, even if they're not necessarily auctioning or bidding or anything, right?
absolutely. It's open regular, like a regular everyday storefront. I've always liked having a storefront. It just makes me feel like, I mean, we could do this internet only, I think, or just, open for auctions. But I just like having a place where people can come visit, look at stuff, sit down, relax, and just enjoy. So it's supposed to be a fun place to come and look at and visit. So you're always welcome, always.
And do you have items there that people can just like buy for a price, or is everything auction?
No, we have a complete retail gallery because that's how we started. So we have a complete retail gallery full of Disney memorabilia, Disneyana, Disneyland Park stuff, non-Disney pieces, a lot of animation because that was where I started, and ceramics, just a little bit of everything. So there's definitely a large inventory of stuff you can buy, and that part of it is always open. Our gallery is actually two sections: a retail gallery section and then an auction section that's open only when there's an exhibition going on. And right now, with our auction schedule, there's usually an exhibition going on every month. But when we're building it or preparing that area, it's closed off.
It's one of the favorite things I'd seen at your location is there was like concept art or a pitch deck or something for Splash Mountain. And it was, I don't know if it was going to be sponsored by or it ended up being sponsored by McDonald's, but this kind of like really beautiful pitch deck
I
had like,
remember that. It
yeah, the
was
McDonald's
bound like a
logo.
leather bound pitch deck, yeah, with all these things. It was going to be sponsored by They were pitching McDonald's, I believe, on being the sponsor for it. Was what that was. Yeah, it was very cool.
Yeah, that was a beautiful piece. So, like you said, you have this location, you do a lot of the displays and auctions there, but sometimes you get these collections from like a single individual that are just insane. And you end up putting on a bigger exhibition. And first of all, I just love this because I know I think the most recent one was a Bed Bath and Beyond in Burbank that had just closed, and you took it over, put this stuff on display. It wasn't the first time you'd done something on this scale, but I love this because it's free for the public. And on top of that, it's just like before everything goes away, goes to auction and gets split up, let's let the fans see this. Is that just kind of how that all started, or how did that first huge exhibition outside of your office space begin?
So it happened. The first one. That was the one you're talking about was last July or last June and or July. I think it was July, and that one was at the Bed Bath and Beyond. In 2018, we did another private collection where we rented a Sports Authority, which was another company that had just gone out of business, and it was a two-story venue because both these guys, had all these ride vehicles and really large pieces that we just couldn't fit into our storefront. Even in this storefront, which is pretty large, it's about 12,000 square feet. But before we moved here, we were in 4,000 square feet. There's just no way to fit any of that in. So I wanted to show the collection off, both back then in 2018, same thing with this one. And there's just no place to do it unless we get a venue. And for me, for the collector too, I think showing what they did, what they've accomplished with their collection, their focused collections on Disneyland or Disney World or things like that, what they've done with them, it needs to be seen by collectors and fans. So it's just something for me. It was just a no-brainer. I had to do it. I mean, it's a lot of work. Believe me, it was a lot of work, and it was expensive to do, but it's just the only way to let people see and enjoy it. And the feedback we get from it and the crowds we got from it were fantastic, which lets me know, that there's a great fan base out there, and people really appreciated it. We had people crying at some of these, which I thought was pretty amazing. The memories it would trigger were just really amazing. So.
Now, I'm not making a suggestion here, but could you legally charge for admission to that if you wanted, or is there some sort of red tape with that?
You probably could. I don't see why not. But for me, it's like that limits who gets to come to see it. And especially, I'm not saying anything bad about this, but let's say I'm a family of 5. Going to Disneyland is an expensive proposition, right? I'm more than happy to have them come and get to experience, the history of Disneyland without having to put out that kind of money. To me, it's just I'd rather not charge. And what works for us, on the business side, is that we had a gift shop. When you exited that place, and so I'm selling things in the gift shop, which sort of make up for me not charging admission. So it worked out okay.
Very cool. Now we got to talk about something I see on your desk, and I have a stack of them right here on my desk. Your catalogs are insane. Anybody can buy these, right? They don't have to have bought something.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
You sell these on your website as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we do.
These catalogs are like these impressive, beautiful books that if you're into collecting Disney stuff, I mean, if you don't have the space for all this stuff in your home, it's just as I love having a book like this. It's an amazing resource, and they are heavy duty. They are high quality. I look through them. Every item that's up for auction is photographed. There's a beautiful description in there. I mean, I don't understand how you get these done. These look at it.
I don't know how it's done either, but as I mentioned, when I first started doing this, I had been to many auctions, and there were things I didn't like about auctions that I said, well, if I'm going to do an auction, I want to improve this. And one of those things was the catalog. I wanted them to be able to have really nice photographs that weren't really small, and you couldn't really see the piece, or lousy descriptions. And I sort of wanted background information when I could get it. And I just wanted it to be something as they could use as a reference and things like that. So from the beginning, we've always worked really hard on the catalogs. Unfortunately, they're super expensive to make, and they're super labor intensive. We actually have 2 photographers here that are working full time, taking pictures, another person who's editing these pictures so they can be print ready, 3 people writing descriptions, as these catalogs go on, and doing the research and things like that. So it's labor on that side. And then after COVID, with paper shortages and things like that, they're extremely expensive to produce, and they weigh a ton, so they're extremely expensive to ship. So it's not a profit-making thing for us at all, but it's actually my favorite part of the auction, is having these catalogs.
So they're sticking around even with all of that?
Oh, yeah. I wouldn't do them without. I really love these catalogs. I love doing them. I mean, like I say, they're a ton of work, but I like the finished product, and it feels like, we wrote a book. So absolutely. Yeah, I think it's an important part of it. So.
Yeah, I would agree. Honestly, it's like, for me, I'm a big theater person, so it's like going to the theater and coming home without a playbill just feels wrong. And, I would have that to say about your auctions. And I will say, if somebody does put an item up for auction, they get a copy of the catalog, don't they?
They do get a copy of the catalog, yes, for sure. Yeah, and if you bought from us in previous auctions, we send out complimentary catalogs. So we actually send out thousands of these. This is the worst business decision I ever made, but we send out thousands of these catalogs to people who have bought from us in the past. So we tend to put all our profits into the catalog. But again, it's just my favorite part of the auction is these catalogs.
Yeah, I've got a great one sitting here in front of me, The Life and Career of Disney Legend Rolly Crump. So, I mean, if you have a specific Disney interest, folks, highly recommend checking out the website, seeing if there's a catalog that corresponds with that, because it's just an amazing resource. It's like, honestly, it's encyclopedic. I've got one here that's like 1.5 inches thick. Like, they're insanely huge.
We just did another one, yeah, just like that. But I use them as reference. I go back because I forget what I sold in these earlier auctions, and so I go back and look. Say, oh my God, there's a piece, and we can use it for price reference and things like that. I mean, for me, they're a lot of fun, but it is a labor of love for sure.
Is there a certain auction theme you would love to do? Like, obviously, you've done Disneyland. I just mentioned you did like a Rolly Crump one, but is there one where, like, if you could get kind of niche, you'd be like, oh, I'd love to do like an all villains auction or something like that?
I think at one point we'll do an all Walt auction. There's some historically amazing Walt Disney stuff out there that I'm hoping comes our way, but no, I'm just open. It just depends on what comes in. We're going to do an auction of the estate of a Warner Brothers animator named Bob Clampett, who was a Warner Brothers director and stuff like that. And that's a wonderful, wonderful estate. It's not Disney, but it does have some Disney ties to it because Bob, actually, his aunt was Charlotte Clark. I don't know if you know who Charlotte Clark was, but she created the first Mickey Mouse doll. And he, when he was like 14 years old, actually drew the design for the doll by going to watch Steamboat Willie over and over again, and because Mickey was new at the time. And then he ended up working at Disney, stuffing the dolls in their in their production facility. But it's a pretty amazing collection, and it has a lot of Disney stuff in it because of that. So.
That's pretty wild. Now, can we talk a little bit about the auction process? Because I believe you do in person and online and often multiple days, right?
Yeah, it depends on so it depends on the auction. What we started the ones we've always done with the catalog are live in person, and you can bid live online. There's one coming. In fact, here. So this is these just came in today. This auction is actually next week. You were talking about that large collection of Bed Bath and Beyond. This is the second half of that collection because the guy we can only put 1,500 pieces in that Bed Bath and Beyond because most of them are really big. This is another 1,500 pieces of his stuff. Thankfully, smaller stuff. Not there's only a couple ride vehicles in here, like three. So we were able to fit it into our facility here. So that's actually what's on exhibition now. But for this auction, we'll have a live in the room auctioneer who will be calling it out, and it'll stream also to our auction platforms. People can, bid by placing a button, and we receive the bids remotely and call them out to the auctioneer. And there'll also be people in the audience bidding, and then we also allow phone bidding, which are people that have pre-registered and say, please call me when this lot comes up. And we have them bidding live on the phone also. So it's a whole mixture of stuff. And then other people call in and leave bids with us, register and leave bids with us, and we bid on their behalf during the auction also. So there's biddings coming from all different directions while this guy's calling out the bids. And we use a live auctioneer because he's one of those I don't want to call him a hog caller, but that's what he is. He a really fast talking kind of auctioneer. He's not thank you and the next bid is this because we'd be here for 30 hours. So this guy moves through the stuff at a really good pace for us and gets us out in 6 or 8 hours, and that's what we want.
That's wild. Now, as we mentioned, you have a lot of amazing archival pieces come through your business. Has the Walt Disney Archives ever purchased a piece from you?
I absolutely, and we also we use them for when we're unsure about stuff. We'll ask them or ask some of their representatives, hey, what do you think about this, or what do you think about that? In fact, we have an ex-archive employee working for us who also actually helps us with a lot of the research on this stuff and getting things done. But they're not people who would buy a lot of stuff. They're not collectors. They're looking to fill in gaps, fill in holes in what they have, because the archive really, especially early stuff from Disneyland, they weren't really keeping that stuff. It wasn't important. They didn't, it wasn't anything they would think about. So stuff occasionally comes up. We'll get stuff that they just are missing. This particular auction coming up has maybe 100 really rare ticket books. So if they were missing one, they might try to bid on one. But they also have a budget, so they may not always win. It's because it does go to the high bidder, and they have to stay within certain budgets.
It must hurt to a point, I would think, on their end to think we owned this and now we have to buy it back.
Maybe, yeah. I think it's just an evolution of how things went. I don't know that when Disneyland first came out, if they ever thought it was going to be, what it became, or look at what the company's become. It's amazing. So.
Does most of the stuff that you put up for auction sell, or do you have a good chunk that, remains unsold after?
I think our average is about 97%, something like
Wow.
that. So it's pretty high, right? Again, the idea is to price the stuff so that it can sell, so that it's affordable to everybody. The stuff that's going to go high is going to go high regardless. So that's okay. But we do want everything to sell for sure.
Now, these days, I feel like a lot of the stuff that we see in the parks, we mentioned popcorn buckets earlier, like these are all kind of labeled as collectible or limited series and stuff like that. So, with that being such a thing, it kind of like encourages collectors today, now, not in the future. So, with stuff like that happening, do you foresee things becoming less valuable since they're, I don't perhaps prematurely being labeled a collectible?
Yeah, I think my rule of thumb, and it's not always true. There are exceptions, and I'll tell you what I think those are. But my rule of thumb has always been if it's manufactured as a collectible, it isn't. I mean that's always been my rule of thumb in my collecting. But I've noticed, and we sell them in the auctions, that some limited editions, especially ones that came out for special events, Kevin and Jody made pieces, or Shag made pieces, have really done well on the secondary market after the fact. Will they continue to do well? We don't know. It could be that it's just their time right now. That they're very popular. Haunted Mansion limited edition stuff has always done well. It's always surprised me, but it's because it's Haunted Mansion. But for the most part, I don't look at manufactured collectibles as being something that's going to have a shelf life. I could be wrong, but that's just how I've always collected. I always try to get the stuff that they would have thrown away.
Yeah, that's what makes it valuable, right? Like nobody knew it was worth anything, so very few people held on to it, and therefore it's super rare.
That's why ticket books are so cool, because finding an unused ticket book is so hard if you think about it, because you would always use at least the admission ticket off the top to get into the park. You may not use the ride tickets necessarily, but so finding like a complete ticket book is something that is much harder because it wasn't meant to be kept complete.
Have fast passes gained any value, considering those are retired and
Yeah, it's too new for one thing, and I think there's a lot out there. The funny thing, when I would say in the last 15 years or so, since we've been doing the auctions and stuff, people are collecting and keeping everything, everything. The placemat from the restaurant, the napkin, the swizzle stick from Club 33, everything is being kept. So that makes for a lot of stuff to be out there.
yeah, it's like how much stuff do you get sent emails about that you just are like, no, like you said, 97% sell. Like how many emails do you get where it's just like, this really just isn't worth anything?
A lot. I won't say that anything's it's worth something. I just have to say that it's nothing that I can put into my auction. That's what I have to say. So I can't put a $50 item into my catalog auction anymore because it costs more than $50 for me to get it into the catalog. So we started doing these online only auctions that don't have catalogs so that we can sell more of that under $100 type item. And that those have been working really well. It gives a newer collector or any collector a chance to get something really affordable, and actually helps us clear our inventory so that we can take in more of that stuff from people. Because there are, as you say, we get emails every day, with people with a Disney coin or a Disney flyer or something that I might have 20 of already, and I can't just take in any more. And we really want to help everybody who wants to sell something if we can. So we'll try.
Are pins as valuable as pin collectors seem to think?
Apparently they are. Yeah, apparently they are. Again, it's not anything I ever collected. I was already too old for it, I think, when they came out, and I stayed away from them for quite a while. But we got in a couple collections that had pins in them, real limited run pins. 150, maybe 200, and those have done very well. Done very, very well. Now there are pins that the ones you buy off the shelf that they've made thousands of. Those probably don't have a lot of value. We have a little bowl up in the front of our gallery. You can pick them up for $1 or something. So, but yeah, some of those limited runs have done very well.
You know what auction I would love to see you do? And it's not exactly Disney, but perhaps you could tie it in with Happy Meal toys. I would love a nostalgic retro McDonald's collection.
That's funny. We were looking actually at a collection that had those McDonald's like life size figures and stuff like that in that. And believe it or not, so in my storage, I probably have 4,000 McDonald's toys. from that period where they were doing all the Disney movies, the Lion King and Aladdin. And I've got the displays and the toys because I was buying them at that time. But they need to get up in value quite a bit before I can put them in a catalog.
But when you say you have them, is this like stuff people are giving to you to auction off eventually, or you're saying like you personally collect?
Yeah, but I personally bought all that stuff back when they were actually. I used to go to McDonald's and buy every Happy Meal toy I could get. Yeah,
Do you have the 101 Dalmatians?
absolutely in the box. Yes.
That's hilarious. I love that. Are you finding it harder to come across new pieces when it comes to like the ride vehicles? Or I remember seeing on some auctions like character costumes, like a Pluto costume, which, I don't know if this is true or not, but I've always heard like when they get rid of those, like they incinerate the head at this point because they don't want those out in the public.
They don't, but they did get out in the 80s, especially out of Walt Disney World, which seems to be a little bit looser as far as stuff getting out. So we've had maybe three Goofy heads over the last couple of years. One Mickey head, I think, and I have a I have a Donald Duck head that's coming up in a future auction. And so they did get out. Some did get out, but for the most part, I think they protect those really well. In fact, I remember the first head we sold was a Mickey head, and this is in our first Disneyland auction. And Disney actually called and said, "Hey, we really don't want you selling that head." And I said, "Okay, no problem. Can you tell me why?" And their answer was they didn't want somebody to wear it on Hollywood Boulevard and try to get money. And I said, well, they can go buy a costume and do that. This head's $25,000. Do you really think someone's going to do that? So I talked them into letting me keep it in the auction. But yeah, I think they do watch that, and I think they really don't want those out, or they don't want them misused. Quite honestly, is what they're more afraid of than anything else.
Yeah. Now, is there anything in your personal collection that you just can't ever imagine selling?
Everything. I regret everything that we used to have a Haunted Mansion painting in our closet because it was too tall to put up on a wall. I didn't have a wall up. So it was in my closet for 20 years, and finally we sold it, and we paid $2,000 for it, and I think it went for $60,000. So you would think, I'd be crazy. I still miss it. I still miss it being in my closet. So yeah, if I don't have to sell anything, I'm happy. I'm that kind of hoarder collector, I think.
Yeah, you are a collector through and through.
Yeah, it's in my blood, I'm afraid.
Were your parents or anybody in your family before you like really into it?
Just me. I don't know why it is. I get that from them all the time. Really? People buy that stuff? I go, yeah, they really do. So
what was the first kind of collection you started?
Oh, well, a kid, coins was a big deal. So I'm sure I started with coins, comic books, always. And I was a big comic book reader. And just anything that interested me. It's always about whatever strikes me in some way. And when I was really small, I lived in Japan, and I worked in a toy shop. I was like 6 years old, or I hung around a toy shop and helped the man that ran it. And I was surrounded by toy robots. So I have a thing for little tin toy robots and things like that. So I'm always on the lookout for those. Just a little bit of everything.
That's awesome. Well, Mike, this has been super interesting and informative. Anything you want to add before we get going here?
No, come and visit us. You're always welcome. Keep an eye on our website for upcoming auctions. And that's it. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, so what is the website?
Oh, it's VE Galleries, VE as in Van Eaton Galleries.com. And one other thing, I'll tell you, I'll plug. That auction you were talking about, the one in Burbank, it was actually filmed for an 8-episode docuseries. And that docuseries is available to stream on the CW.com right now. And then in August, it goes to Netflix. It gives you a look of what it took to put that together. You were curious about it, about putting the catalog together, about taking over that Bed Bath & Beyond. It's sort of all the background information on that. And if you didn't get to see that auction, it's a great way to see what was in that collection and watch it get sold. So
that's awesome. And what's the official title of that?
It's called Up for Auction, and it's hosted by Chris Hardwick.
Oh, okay. Very cool. Well, excellent. Well, Mike, thanks for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Anytime, man. You guys take care.
If you enjoyed this episode, be sure and check out episode 585 of Disney Coast to Coast, when I interviewed Richard Kraft, who sold off his massive Disney collection through Van Eaton Galleries. Don't miss any future episodes by subscribing and following Disney with a Z, Coast to Coast on your favorite podcast app, where episodes are available 24/7. If you're a longtime listener of the show, thank you. And if you have the means, consider supporting the show over on Patreon. By joining Disney Coast to Coast's Patreon membership, you'll gain access to extra bonuses, including live stream Ask Me Anythings, unreleased episodes, and more bonus content. Take a look at all that's available by clicking the Patreon link in this episode's description, and thank you for considering. And thanks to Everlasting Light for leaving a 5-star rating and review saying, if you're a true Disney fan or just starting to become a huge fan, this is a perfect way to learn new things. Leave a review wherever you listen to the podcast, and you may just hear it read on a future episode. Until next time, anything you need can be found in this episode's description. From additional information and links discussed in this episode found in the show notes, to the DCTC hotline where you can leave a voicemail and be heard on a future episode, contact info to reach me, access to the show's official website, some free gifts from me to you, and so much more. So be sure to check out this episode's description. Other than that, folks, have a magical day. Bye!